No modern heating, no insulated clothing, no stored food supplies. Between 15,000 and 10,000 years ago, Native American tribes survived winters that were 20 to 30 degrees colder than today's harshest conditions, with ice sheets extending as far south as present-day Illinois and snow depths that could reach 15 to 20 feet in areas that are now temperate climates. These weren't brief cold snaps. They were 6 to 8 month winters where temperatures dropped to 40 to 60 degrees below zero and stayed there for weeks at a time, creating survival challenges that would defeat modern humans equipped with advanced technology. They faced blizzards that could last for days, with wind speeds exceeding 80 miles per hour and visibility reduced to zero, trapping families in shelters for weeks without the ability to hunt or gather food. They endured ice storms that could coat everything in 2 to 3 inches of solid ice, making travel impossible and collapsing shelters under the weight. They survived in landscapes where the ground remained frozen to depths of 8 to 10 feet year-round, preventing normal food gathering and requiring completely different survival strategies. Every technique had to work perfectly. One inadequate shelter could result in death from hypothermia within hours when temperatures dropped below survivable limits. One failed food preservation method could mean starvation during the months when hunting was impossible and plant foods were buried under impenetrable ice. One mistake in clothing construction could lead to frostbite and death when exposed to wind chills that could freeze exposed skin in minutes. One poor site selection could trap families in locations where they would be buried alive by snow or killed by avalanches. The Native American tribes who survived these Ice Age winters had developed survival techniques that were more sophisticated and effective than any modern cold weather gear. Methods that could maintain body heat and provide nutrition using only natural materials and human ingenuity. Strategies that could sustain entire communities through months of conditions that would be considered uninhabitable today. But how did Native Americans create shelter systems that could maintain livable temperatures when outside conditions were deadly? What clothing techniques provided insulation equivalent to modern Arctic gear using only animal materials? Which food preservation and procurement methods could sustain communities when normal hunting and gathering were impossible for months? And how did these survival strategies prove more reliable than modern technology in the most extreme conditions humans have ever faced? Today, we're exploring the ingenious survival techniques that allowed Native Americans to not just survive, but thrive during Ice Age winters. Methods that represent the pinnacle of human adaptation to extreme cold conditions. My name is Sam, and this is Wild America. The Underground Shelter Revolution, Engineering Survival Below the Frost Line. The Clovis people of 13,000 years ago had perfected underground shelter construction that could maintain interior temperatures of 60 to 70 degrees Fahrenheit when outside temperatures dropped to 50 below zero, using thermal mass principles and insulation techniques that modern engineers are only beginning to understand. These weren't simple dugouts. They were sophisticated thermal management systems that could house 15 to 20 people for months while using minimal fuel for heating. The excavation process began in late summer when the ground was still workable, with families digging circular pits 12 to 15 feet in diameter and 6 to 8 feet deep to reach below the frost line where earth temperatures remained constant at 45 to 50 degrees Fahrenheit year-round. The excavation required removing approximately 800 cubic feet of soil using only wooden digging sticks, stone tools, and fire-hardened wooden shovels, with the work divided among all family members over 4 to 6 weeks. The foundation construction used carefully selected stones weighing 50 to 100 pounds each, arranged in a circular pattern that provided structural support while creating thermal mass that could store and release heat throughout the day and night cycle. The stones were heated in large fires, then positioned while hot to transfer maximum thermal energy into the foundation system. The gaps between stones were filled with smaller rocks and clay mortar that created airtight seals. The wall system used a double-layer construction technique that created an insulation barrier equivalent to modern building standards while using only natural materials. The inner wall was constructed from logs 8 to 10 inches in diameter, chinked with clay and moss to eliminate air leaks. The outer wall used smaller logs and branches, with the 18 to 24-inch gap between walls filled with dried grass, leaves, and animal fur that created an insulation system with R values comparable to modern fiberglass. The roof construction employed a sophisticated dome design that could support snow loads of 5 to 10 tons while maintaining structural integrity throughout the winter. The framework used bent saplings arranged in a geodesic pattern that distributed weight evenly across the entire structure. The covering system used multiple layers of bark, hides, and sod arranged in overlapping patterns that shed water while providing insulation equivalent to 12 to 18 inches of modern insulation. The ventilation system prevented carbon monoxide poisoning while maintaining heat retention through a carefully engineered air exchange system that used natural convection to circulate fresh air. The intake vent was positioned near the floor and angled downward to prevent cold air from entering directly. The exhaust vent was located at the highest point of the dome and included a baffle system that allowed smoke and stale air to escape while preventing heat loss. The heating integration used a central fire pit surrounded by stones that absorbed heat during active fires and radiated warmth for 8 to 12 hours after the fire died down. The fire pit was connected to a sophisticated flue system that directed smoke through channels in the walls before exiting, transferring maximum heat to the thermal mass while preventing smoke accumulation in the living space. The system could maintain comfortable temperatures using only 2 to 3 hours of active fire per day. The interior organization maximized space efficiency while providing specialized areas for sleeping, food storage, and tool maintenance that could support extended winter habitation. Sleeping areas were positioned at the warmest locations near the thermal mass, with raised platforms that kept occupants off the cold floor. Food storage areas were located in the coolest sections, where temperatures remained just above freezing, providing natural refrigeration for preserved foods. Revolutionary clothing systems layered protection against extreme cold. The Folsom culture of 12,000 years ago had developed clothing systems that provided insulation and weather protection superior to modern Arctic gear, using layered construction techniques and specialized materials that could maintain body heat in conditions that would defeat contemporary cold weather clothing. These weren't simple animal skin garments. They were engineered thermal management systems that could keep humans alive and functional in temperatures that would cause death within minutes for unprotected individuals. The base layer system used specially prepared rabbit fur that was twisted into continuous yarn, then woven into fabric that provided insulation while wicking moisture away from the skin. The preparation process involved skinning rabbits in continuous spiral cuts that created fur strips 20 to 30 feet long, which were then twisted with sinew to create yarn with insulation properties superior to modern merino wool. The weaving process created fabric with thousands of tiny air pockets that trapped body heat while allowing moisture transfer. The insulation layer used carefully selected bird down and animal fur arranged in quilted patterns that created maximum loft while preventing compression that could reduce insulation effectiveness. Goose and duck down was collected during molting seasons and stored in waterproof containers made from animal bladders. The down was sewn between layers of thin leather using techniques that created individual chambers, preventing the down from shifting and maintaining consistent insulation throughout the garment. The outer shell construction used specially treated animal hides that provided wind and water resistance while maintaining flexibility in extreme cold conditions. The treatment process involved brain tanning techniques that used enzymes from animal brains to create leather that remained supple at temperatures down to 60 below zero. The hides were smoked using specific wood types that added water-repelling compounds while preventing bacterial growth that could cause the leather to deteriorate. The extremity protection included specialized mittens, boots, and face coverings that prevented frostbite while maintaining dexterity for essential tasks like fire-making and tool use. Mittens were constructed with separate thumb sections and trigger finger openings that allowed weapon use while keeping fingers together for maximum warmth. The construction used multiple layers with fur-lined interiors and waterproof exteriors that could be removed for drying without exposing hands to dangerous cold. The boot system used a sophisticated multi-layer design that provided insulation, waterproofing, and traction on ice while allowing for extended travel in deep snow conditions. The inner boot was made from soft fur-lined leather that provided insulation and comfort. The outer boot used thick waterproof leather with specialized sole construction that included carved tread patterns and embedded bone or antler cleats that provided traction on ice and frozen ground. The layering strategy used specific combinations of garments that could be adjusted based on activity level and weather conditions while maintaining optimal thermal regulation. The system included 4 to 5 distinct layers that could be added or removed to prevent overheating during physical activity while providing maximum protection during rest periods. Each layer was designed to work with the others, creating air gaps that enhanced insulation while allowing moisture transfer. The repair and maintenance techniques kept clothing functional throughout the winter, using only materials and tools available in winter conditions. Repair kits included pre-cut patches, sinew thread, and bone needles that could be used to fix tears or worn areas before they became serious problems. The maintenance process included regular cleaning, re-waterproofing, and fur grooming that maintained the clothing's protective properties throughout months of continuous use. The specialized garments included parkas, pants, and accessories designed for specific activities like hunting, traveling, or shelter maintenance that required different combinations of protection and mobility. Hunting garments prioritized stealth and mobility while maintaining warmth, using colors and materials that provided camouflage. Travel garments emphasized weather protection and durability for extended exposure to extreme conditions. Advanced food systems, nutrition through the frozen months. The Clovis and Folsom peoples had developed food procurement, preservation, and preparation techniques that could sustain communities of 50 to 100 individuals through 6 to 8 month winters when normal hunting and gathering were impossible, using methods that provided complete nutrition while preventing spoilage in extreme cold conditions. These weren't simple preservation techniques. They were sophisticated food management systems that could maintain community health and energy levels throughout the harshest conditions. The autumn preparation phase involved intensive hunting and gathering activities that could accumulate 15,000 to 20,000 pounds of food per community during the brief 6 to 8 week period when large game animals were available and plant foods reached peak nutritional content. The hunting focused on megafauna like mammoths, mastodons, and giant bison that could provide 8,000 to 12,000 pounds of meat from a single animal, enough to sustain a community for months when properly preserved. The meat preservation process used controlled freezing, smoking, and fat packing techniques that could maintain nutritional value and prevent spoilage for 8 to 10 months without refrigeration technology. Large cuts of meat were processed into strips 1/4 inch thick and 2 to 3 feet long, then air-dried in the cold, dry conditions that naturally occurred during early winter. The drying process removed 80 to 90% of the moisture content while concentrating proteins and nutrients. The fat rendering operation extracted and purified animal fats that served as both preservation medium and concentrated energy source, providing 9 calories per gram compared to 4 calories per gram for proteins and carbohydrates. The rendering process involved slow heating of fat tissues in large stone-lined pits, with the rendered fat stored in waterproof containers made from animal stomachs or bladders. The fat was used to pack preserved meat, creating airtight seals that prevented spoilage. The pemmican production combined dried meat, rendered fat, and concentrated plant foods into high-energy survival food that could provide complete nutrition while remaining stable for years in cold storage conditions. The production process involved grinding dried meat into powder using stone mortars, then mixing with rendered fat and dried berries in specific ratios that maximized nutritional content while ensuring proper preservation. Each pound of pemmican provided 2,500 to 3,000 calories. The plant food preservation focused on nuts, seeds, and roots that could provide essential vitamins and minerals while remaining stable in frozen storage conditions. Acorns were processed to remove bitter tannins, then ground into flour and stored in waterproof containers. Wild rice was harvested and parched to remove moisture, then stored in underground caches that remained frozen throughout winter. Root vegetables were dried or stored in underground pits lined with bark and insulated with leaves. The winter hunting techniques adapted to extreme cold conditions and limited daylight, focusing on small game animals and ice fishing that could provide fresh food supplements to preserved supplies. Trap lines were established using deadfall traps and snares that could operate automatically, allowing hunters to check multiple locations efficiently. Ice fishing used specialized spears and hooks that could be operated through holes maintained in frozen lakes and rivers. The cooking methods maximized fuel efficiency while providing hot, nutritious meals that could maintain body heat and morale during extreme cold periods. Stone boiling techniques used heated rocks to cook food in waterproof baskets, conserving firewood while providing hot meals. Roasting pits used stored heat from fires to cook large quantities of food using minimal additional fuel. Soup preparation combined preserved and fresh ingredients to create nutritious warming meals. The rationing systems ensured that food supplies lasted throughout the winter while maintaining adequate nutrition for all community members, using distribution methods that prioritized hunters, pregnant women, and children while ensuring that everyone received sufficient calories. Daily rations were calculated based on activity level and body size, with adjustments made based on remaining supplies and expected winter duration. Emergency reserves were maintained separately from regular supplies. Community survival strategies, collective endurance through cooperation. The Ice Age tribes understood that individual survival was impossible in extreme conditions, developing sophisticated social systems and cooperative strategies that could sustain entire communities through months of life-threatening conditions while maintaining morale and preventing the social breakdown that could doom everyone to death. These weren't simple sharing arrangements. They were complex social technologies that maximized group survival while ensuring that essential knowledge and skills were preserved and transmitted. The labor specialization system assigned specific survival roles to community members based on their skills, physical capabilities, and experience, ensuring that all essential tasks were completed efficiently while preventing duplication of effort that could waste precious energy and resources. Master hunters were responsible for procuring large game and training younger hunters. Expert craftspeople focused on tool making, clothing construction, and shelter maintenance. Elders served as knowledge keepers and decision makers who could draw on decades of survival experience. The resource sharing protocols established strict but fair distribution systems that ensured survival resources were allocated based on need and contribution while preventing hoarding or waste that could threaten community survival. Food distribution prioritized pregnant women, nursing mothers, and children who required adequate nutrition for survival and development. Tool and material sharing ensured that essential equipment was available to those who needed it most while maintaining community ownership of critical resources. The knowledge preservation systems used storytelling, demonstration, and ritual to ensure that essential survival techniques were transmitted to younger generations while maintaining accuracy and completeness of information that could mean the difference between life and death. Master craftspeople taught apprentices through hands-on training that continued throughout the winter months. Elders recounted survival stories that contained practical information disguised as entertainment, ensuring that critical knowledge was remembered and applied. The decision-making processes used consensus-building techniques that could resolve conflicts and make critical survival decisions quickly, while ensuring that all perspectives were considered and community unity was maintained. Council meetings included all adult community members and used structured discussion methods that prevented arguments while encouraging input from those with relevant experience. Emergency decisions could be made by designated leaders when immediate action was required. The morale maintenance activities included games, storytelling, music, and ceremonies that could maintain psychological health and community cohesion during months of confinement and stress that could lead to depression, violence, or social breakdown. Winter games used available materials to create entertainment that also served as skill training for hunting, tool making, and other survival activities. Storytelling sessions provided education and entertainment while reinforcing community values and survival knowledge. The conflict resolution systems prevented disputes over resources, responsibilities, or personal conflicts from escalating into violence that could threaten community survival during periods when cooperation was essential for everyone's survival. Mediation techniques used respected elders to resolve disputes before they became serious problems. Punishment systems for serious violations included temporary exile or resource restrictions that maintained community discipline without threatening individual survival. The health maintenance protocols used available medicinal plants, physical therapy, and preventive care to maintain community health during months when injuries or illness could be fatal due to limited treatment options and harsh conditions. Medicinal plant preparations were made from preserved herbs and roots that could treat common winter ailments like respiratory infections, digestive problems, and injuries. Physical therapy techniques maintained mobility and strength during months of limited activity. The emergency response procedures established protocols for dealing with disasters like shelter collapse, fire, injury, or death that could threaten community survival if not handled quickly and effectively. Emergency supply caches were maintained in multiple locations to provide backup resources if primary supplies were lost. Evacuation procedures could move the entire community to backup shelter locations if primary shelters became uninhabitable. These sophisticated survival systems represented the pinnacle of human adaptation to extreme environmental conditions, developed through thousands of years of trial and error by people who had no choice but to perfect these techniques or face extinction. "The old ones knew things about surviving the cold that we can't even imagine," wrote anthropologist Dr. Margaret Blackwood in 1987, studying Ice Age archaeological sites. "They didn't just survive conditions that would kill us in hours, they thrived in them, raised families, and built cultures that lasted for thousands of years." The survival techniques that sustained Native Americans through Ice Age winters prove that human ingenuity and cooperation can overcome environmental challenges that seem impossible to modern people who have forgotten what true survival requires.